Hey there, third period. This is our first lesson in the classical periods unit, and today we're going to be looking at 2.1 classical empires in East Asia. So this right here, you're going to see this on every single set of videos. So this, we're talking about 600 BCE to 600 CE, and today we're focusing on China, which is right here in yellow, but I want you to see also the other regions that we're going to be learning about through 2.7. And then over here, if you were to look, we're here in East Asia, so we're going to be looking right around here, right around 500 BCE, all the way through the Han Dynasty. So I want you to see that these different empires definitely overlap with other empires. So for instance, Rome knew that China existed and vice versa. So this is also on your page 56. So our learning goal is that you'll be able to trace the origins, the expansion, and the consolidation of the Han Dynasty. And so we're first going to sequence the transition from a feudal state to a centralized state under the Shin Dynasty. The Shin Dynasty came before the Han. And then we're going to examine the political and philosophical expansion of the Han Dynasty. And then we're going to explore the economic and the religious foundations of the Han Dynasty. So the Han Dynasty occurred after the Shin, so we do need to learn about the Shin because that did provide the foundation. I'm not going to read everything to you. Again, you have all of this information on your page 56, but this is the guiding learning targets and essential questions for both your notes and also for the source explorations. So, we're going to look at 2.1a, transition from a feudal to a centralized state under the Shin Dynasty. And this is your source 1, which you've already seen. So in the 400s BCE, the Zhou dynasty, ruling aristocrats or nobles, they began to fight each other for power. And each aristocrat created his own state. So this 200-year conflict is called the Warring States period. So each of these were their own little state, sort of like the Articles of Confederation, and they were fighting with each other. So during the Warring States period, there were changes in how the military did battle. So they used cheaper iron weapons, so those replaced the bronze weapons, and so therefore the warfare changed from these skilled aristocratic or noble chariots to large infantries made up of farmers. So if you remember, during the ancient period, it was the elites that were in the military because they had this money and time, so they could afford these weapons and they had time to practice. We don't have that issue anymore because we have these super cheap weapons, and so now anybody can basically be a soldier. So this weakens the aristocrats' power, and it also de-skills warfare. So no longer do we need the elites to be warriors. Under the emperor Shi Huangdi, the Shin made the first centralized imperial state in China. So the Shin, they united all of those warring states into one. So the Shin was one of the warring states, and the ruler's infantry defeated its neighbors and united them into one centralized empire through conquest and forceful diplomacy. This was not a peaceful unification. The Shin state kept this unified political authority by creating and implementing these super harsh authoritarian law codes that were informed by legalism. And so legalism was the philosophy used by the Shin, and the whole idea is that all humans are naturally evil, that the only way that you can force people to do the right thing is to keep order And to keep order is by creating these harsh laws and strict punishments that people will not naturally do the right thing on their own. That is what legalism is all about. So if you remember, the mandate of heaven, which was during the ancient period, was that the gods chose the ruler, and the ruler did make the gods happy, and therefore there was peace on earth. The Shin, it's all about these strict law codes. Peasants under the Shin were mostly free, and they also paid taxes in the form of military service. There was unity in this empire, and that was created by standardizing and simplifying Chinese writing. So they only now have like 9,000 Chinese characters in their writing. They also use standard weights and measures, so that's really important, so that everybody knows everybody knows what a quarter of a cup is. Back then they didn't, so they standardized weights and measures, and they also standardized currency. They all had the same money. The Shin Dynasty was very centralized, so the leader had ultimate power, and the Shin Dynasty was broken up into 40 provinces that were overseen by governors, so sort of think like our 50 states, but those governors were directly appointed by the emperor. So those governors had to do the emperor's bidding. So to protect the Shin Empire from invasion from these warring pastoralists, I don't know how to say their name, the Shin had hundreds of farmers build the beginnings of the Great Wall. So this is when the Great Wall of China first begins. Now we're going to look at the political and philosophical expansion of the Han Dynasty. So again, that's what really our focus is, but we had to know about the Shin. So here you see source 6. This is the map of the Han Dynasty. So it has everything from the Shin pretty much, and then it extended. So the Han Dynasty made a centralized empire, and it built upon the bureaucracy and the traditions of the Shin. So it just built upon that. The Han emperors abandoned that authoritarian principle of legalism, those strict laws and harsh punishments, and instead they associated themselves with Confucianism. And Confucianism ideas were that duty to family and to your community should come before your own needs. Also should come before your duty to whatever your leader says. So Confucianism became tied to the Chinese state, meaning that the government was embracing this Confucianism. So this whole rule by scholar bureaucrats was which rewarded merit or ability instead of aristocratic lineage, who you're born to. So people got into government because they took tests, and if you passed this test, you showed you were able, you could get a government job. It was not based on if your family was in the nobility. Because of large armies, the borders expanded much further than in the Shin Dynasty, and again you see that in source 6. So the red outline is the Shin Dynasty, and so you see that the Han is much greater than that. Went all the way south to Vietnam, north to Korea, and west to Central Asia. As China expanded, merchants and peasants followed that expansion. Between 5 to 10 million peasants settled in the Yangtze River Valley during the Han Dynasty. So the people, the peasants and the people who are selling goods, are going where the expansion is. So the Han imperial expansion and migration spread influence of Chinese culture throughout East Asia. Where those people go, so does their culture. Lastly, we're going to look at the economic and religious foundations of the Han Dynasty. During this classical period, China led the largest and the most innovative economy in the world. So free peasants owned land. They made agricultural goods for local markets. Wheat and rice farmers, they used iron tools. Remember, iron is cheap. So they used these iron tools and these new inventions. So in China, they invented the wheelbarrow. They invented the seed drill, the cast iron plow, the loom, which you see in this top left corner. These free laborers, they produced silk, porcelain, paper. There's an image of paper down below. It's one of the earliest papers that were ever found. They had cast iron goods, and the quality of these goods, and also that they're portable, so silk isn't very heavy, paper is not very heavy, porcelain containers aren't very heavy. It made them perfect for long distance trade. It made them perfect for things like the Silk Road. The Han Dynasty experienced a lot of urbanization due to expansions of commerce and consumer demand. And also that long-distance trade along the Silk Road. So this is the Han Dynasty is when they're trading with these empires over here to in the west. The main religion of the Han Dynasty was Taoism, with traditions related to meditation and detachment. The idea was that nature and the Tao, and Tao means the way, are more important than worldly possessions. So you need to find your way, not owning things. Owning things won't make you happy. So oftentimes people mix the social philosophy of Confucianism, this duty to your family, to your community, with Taoism. Later on, Taoism is going to transition into Buddhism in China. And here, because you will learn about, these are the three philosophies that you learned about in these notes. So we first started with legalism, and then we had Confucianism, which is a philosophy in the beginning of the Han Dynasty, and then Taoism is a religion. These first two are just philosophies. So those are all of your notes. The expectation, the requirement is that you will now go back through your notes and you will record questions that are going to help you to process these notes. This should make the answering questions on forms much easier, and also perhaps help you with this contextualization that you will be using in two places in your performance test, including your evidence-based essay. So do those questions, and then we will talk about everything next time I see you in class.